Regret is a slow poison. It doesn't kill you instantly, but it eats away at you, piece by piece, until you are nothing but a shell of the person you once were. I know this because I feel it every day. For years, I thought I had control over my life, my career, my choices, and even the people around me. My military achievements, my promotions, my successes, they all proved that I had command over everything. Or so I thought. But now, as I sit in this empty house, silence closing in on me like a suffocating fog, I realize the truth. Control was never mine to hold. I was blind to everything that mattered, and it cost me more than I could ever repay. She is gone. And I was the one who pushed her away. I remember the moment it all started unraveling, the moment I saw her face, broken and angry, but still holding on to a sliver of hope. She looked at me with eyes that asked for something I couldn't give. And I turned away. My name is Alexander Alex Hawke. I was the eldest son of a lineage built on discipline, duty, and sacrifice. The Hawkes were not a family to be known for tenderness. My father, General Richard Hawke, had carved his name into history, not through kindness or empathy, but through sheer force of will. Growing up in the shadow of his cold, imposing presence was both a blessing and a curse. There was no room for weakness, no room for feelings that didn't serve a greater purpose. He taught me that. Duty comes first, Alex, he would say, his voice as hard as the marble statues that lined our halls. And when you serve with all that you are. Nothing less. I spent my childhood training for a future I hadn't chosen. Every lesson was calculated, every move I made was scrutinized. I was molded into someone who could carry on his legacy, not someone who could think for himself, not someone who had time for softness. I was his heir, and my purpose was to carry on the Hawke name. My father never once said he was proud of me. The closest I ever came to hearing those words was in the quiet moments when he looked at me after an accomplishment, the slightest glimmer of approval in his eyes. But that was enough. It had to be. Then came Samantha. She was an intrusion, a complication. A child I didn't know how to deal with, and certainly one I didn't need. But life doesn't ask for permission, and Samantha was there, waiting for me to acknowledge her. The first time I saw her, she was standing in the doorway of our home, her small fists clenched in defiance, her eyes burning with an intensity I hadn't seen in anyone her age. She had just lost everything, her parents, both military doctors who died on the battlefield. My father, feeling the weight of his duty, brought her into our home. A young orphan, a casualty of war, a reminder of everything he stood for. She was too young to understand what had happened, too young to comprehend the reality of her loss. But that didn't stop her from holding it inside, from carrying a weight far too heavy for her small frame. The first time she met me, she looked up at me with eyes that were full of something I couldn't name. And I felt nothing. At 20, I was already deep in my military training. My mind was focused on the future, on my next assignment. I had no room for distractions, certainly none as inconvenient as a grieving child. But there was something about her that lingered, her fierce independence, her unwillingness to show weakness. She was different. And it made me uncomfortable. Sam, she called me one day, her voice barely a whisper, but defiant nonetheless. I had protested, telling her she should call me Mr. Hawke. But she didn't, and I let her get away with it. As the years passed, Samantha became something I couldn't ignore. She was always there, her presence like a shadow, constantly following me, seeking my attention. It was maddening. She would fake illnesses just to keep me home. I would catch her sitting by the door, waiting for me to return from my missions, eyes wide with hope. I tried to push her away, to focus on my work. But no matter how many times I told her to stop, to grow up, she kept coming back. I knew what she wanted. And I refused to acknowledge it. But deep down, I felt it, the way she looked at me, the way her eyes lingered on me whenever I spoke. It was impossible to ignore. And every time I did, the guilt would twist inside me. I wanted to push her away, but I didn't know how. She was my responsibility. Nothing more. Then came the day she confessed her feelings. "I love you, Alex," she said, her voice trembling but steady. I was shocked, anger rising within me. "You don't understand what you're saying," I snapped. "You're just a child." "I'm 18, she said, unyielding. I didn't care. "You don't know what love is. Stop embarrassing yourself." She crumpled, her face a mixture of pain and defiance. I thought she would run away, but she didn't. She stood her ground, meeting my gaze with an intensity that burned through me. That was the last time she spoke to me like she had before. When I returned from my next mission, I expected to find her still chasing me, still clinging to childish fantasies. But when I saw her again, it was as if someone had ripped away the girl I had known. She was different. She no longer faked illnesses to get my attention. She no longer wore makeup beyond her years, trying to make herself more attractive. Instead, she was quiet, distant. She had grown up. And then, I saw the thick envelope she tried to hide behind her back, an acceptance letter to Westgate Medical Academy, a school far from me and everything I knew. "Why didn't you apply to Harvard?" I demanded, not sure why it mattered. Her face remained calm. "Because I don't want to live for someone else's expectations anymore." She had stopped chasing me, stopped needing me. And I hated it. Victoria Jennings had always been my ideal partner. A brilliant journalist, well-spoken and ambitious. She was everything I thought I needed. She supported my career, understood my responsibilities, and never demanded more than I could give. But she wasn't Samantha. Victoria was composed, refined, predictable. She never challenged me the way Samantha had. She never made me feel uncomfortable, never asked me to face myself. So why did Samantha's absence feel like an open wound, a constant ache in my chest? I told myself that Victoria was the right choice. That she was practical, steady, someone who could give me the life I needed. And yet, when Samantha heard of our engagement, and merely smiled, I felt something twist inside me. When Samantha packed her bags and left without a word, I realized the truth. There was a hole inside me, one that no amount of success or stability could fill. And I was afraid I would never be able to fix it. It all came crashing down with Victoria's article. She had twisted the truth, manipulated the facts, and destroyed Samantha's reputation. I should have defended her. I should have stepped forward and spoken the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed silent, burying my guilt behind my sense of duty. Samantha confronted Victoria in front of me, her voice steady and strong as she proved her innocence, even though the weight of the world was on her shoulders. And then, she turned to me. "What about me, Alex? What about my future?" For once, I had no answer. There was nothing left to say. Then she slapped me, her voice trembling with finality. 10 years of love and resentment. Let's call it even. Victoria wasn't just a journalist. She was a spy, feeding off my trust and using me to further her own goals. By the time the truth came out, my career was ruined, my name disgraced. I lost everything. And the only person who had ever truly cared about me, Samantha, was gone. She had found a new life, a man who loved her for who she was, who stood beside her instead of above her. And I was nothing but a relic of her past. I watched as she moved on, leaving me to drown in the mess I had created. I was a fool to think I could control everything, to think that my choices didn't have consequences. On her wedding day, I handed her my mother's bracelet, the Hawke family heirloom. She refused it. "Mr. Hawke," she said gently, "this belongs to your family. I am not part of it." I left before the ceremony ended. That night, alone in the empty house where she once lived, I finally understood. She had spent her life chasing a dream. And all along, the fool had been me.